Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anisa Turon, your host, with my co-host Jamila Kasim, and we have been celebrating, and we're in a celebratory mode. Maybe we would like to get into one, I think,
Yes.
because we are a little bit both beat for the week that's been ahead, that's just passed. But we're celebrating today 40 times that we've had these sessions. Hey, Jamila, can you believe?
Anissa, it's taking me a little bit of effort to actually digest that it's 40 episodes down the line since we started. That's what, 10
Mhm.
months?
Yeah,
Um,
it's 10 months.
yeah, it's 10 months and 10 months of, getting to know you a lot better, 10 months of meeting absolutely inspirational, motivational, incredible human beings who've been on our show, but not just the guests themselves, but also our amazing audience, who've
Yeah,
shared this journey with us. And we have had the pleasure of getting to know these people. So definitely
very
feeling very
much.
blessed and grateful. And for sure, it's something to celebrate. And yeah, just
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I can remember last year this time, I think is when you and
we
I
first,
first connected. And
yes,
I was telling you that I'm leaving for Turkey on the 27th of October. So we can only
correct.
kind of do our go live sessions maybe when I return in November. So, I mean, it's just so surreal that consistency. I want to acknowledge us first and foremost. We showed up here every week, no matter how tired, no matter how overwhelmed, no matter what happened in our lives, what stresses, what obstacles, what challenges were thrown our way, we still showed up. So I want to
Ab-
just say thank you, Jamila, for standing by my side. I think I've missed one session when I had my son up in Johannesburg, and then
yes,
you've missed one session, and that was the only time we ever missed the
yes.
session together.
No,
So
absolutely. And Anissa,
huge, huge acknowledgement.
it is an absolutely huge acknowledgement, and likewise for you as well, for keeping it going, for putting in the effort and the commitment to this. And I think why it's been something that's remained consistent is firstly because it's something that's dear to our hearts. This is something that we both
Hmm.
wanted to do. It's something that we both believe in. The people that we've got on have come with stories that we can resonate with and learn from. But I think overall, um, it's also because we decided to come here and just show up as our authentic selves. So no matter what
Absolutely.
was going on in our lives around the time from Friday to Friday, and even especially on the Fridays, we showed up in whichever shape, form, or mood we were in. And this is what we presented. And I think we kept
Okay.
true to our initial objective of just letting
Yes,
this to real space, for people to come,
absolutely.
yeah, for people to come to this space just as an exhale, um,
Mm.
and relax.
What I want to say, I don't think I could have done this all on my own to keep it together like this every week, or you and I could have done this. We have to give recognition and acknowledgement to the person that's behind the scenes, that's not on the camera. But for those that don't know her, her name is Marissa Cairncross, and she is the one that helps us put these beautiful images together, helps us craft the content, in terms of the poster that we put together. And at the same time, she's also the very person that engages our guests both locally and internationally, making sure that all the behind the scenes logistics are taken care of. In fact, she's even sent us an overview of the topics we've had over the last few weeks across the different guests. So when I'm looking down, please know that I'm just going to glance my eye on some of these topics that we discussed. So, Marissa, I certainly can't do this without you by my side or our side. I think you hold me accountable and you truly and truly just do a phenomenal job in putting this stuff together for us. If you are
Absolutely.
listening, send us a comment.
Actually, we should have gotten her to come on to
We
this and
should have,
give her a
hey?
proper acknowledgement for this. And
Mhm.
Marissa, if you are listening, this comes especially from me, and I get tons of messages from you, and I go through them and I read it, and I know that I don't always acknowledge, but please, please know that I'm always grateful for the amount of work that you put in, for the commitment that you show, and for believing in us. It's
Yes,
a huge job. It's a lot to deal with, especially when you've got so much else going on in your life. But like you
yes,
said, speaking to the guests and making sure that we have the greatest of guests on each week. So, big, big, big shout out to you, Marissa. We couldn't do this without you.
yes. I see Avril and Wadia has joined on the Instagram. Avril and myself and Marissa actually were colleagues together in a not so distant life. So thank you for being here. And maybe when we're on the 1 year anniversary, then we'll get Marissa. Absolutely, we must get Marissa back in again.
Okay. So I think on our 1 year anniversary as well, we would like to invite our guests, who have been on our
Yeah.
MVP Ronald, who is always here holding our hand by our sides, supporting us, and always sharing his, years and years of wisdom, which he has um, cultivated, I suppose, over his lifetime. And he's been one of the ones who have just kept us going as well. Anissa, I think we should really, really give acknowledgement
Always.
to him.
Yes, I mean, there's a few. Gosh, if we have to start on who the guests are that are regulars, but I certainly do want to recognize a few of them. But before we do that, before we go, I mean, what stood out for you in these last 40 episodes that we hosted? What is the biggest insight and learning or few nuggets? Because there were too many to say just one. What stood out for you?
For me,
Mm,
geez, you're putting me in a very, very awkward position now, Anissa,
I'll
because
start.
every one of them have been so insightful. I've learned so much from each one, but I think one that really does resonate for me is the one about unraveling generational patterns. Um,
Yeah,
and challenging
that was
biases,
Kerry.
transforming negative thinking. That was one that really also resonated with me, made
Yeah,
me think a lot about my own life and my own patterns of behavior. And it made a huge difference, made a huge difference in the way that I thought about who I am as a person, but, as a daughter, as a mother. Um, that one really did resonate with me. But like I said,
I
there's been
think
so many.
there's been many. There's been many, many, many. But for me, the common theme that came out of it is that every episode was underpinned by love, by empathy, by compassion, by kindness. Every guest that walked a journey, whether it was Candice Fox that spoke about becoming our own money heroes, there was also something to do with love, kindness, compassion, empathy, and really shifting out of our ego states and
Yeah.
leaving with understanding that we actually all are the same. We are one.
Yes,
You want
absolutely.
to
I
say
think
something, man?
for me, a resonating theme also across all of them was that of resilience, and positive
Spot
resilience.
on. Yes. Very,
Because
very, very much so.
resilience can also be negative, where we're constantly doing things, but we're not doing it for our greater good. We're always doing it
Mm,
for the greater good of everyone else. So we're resilient in the way that we show up for everyone else. But positive resilience is being able to do that whilst being able to acknowledge what's good for you and allowing yourself to show up in your own highest interest.
yeah, yeah. And then another thing that was very impressive for me was some of the gentlemen that we had on, their
Yes.
courage and them being torchbearers for the other men out there. I mean, if I look at the list here, Ron Earl was one of them. Mark was on. I think Mark's session I only listened to afterwards. That was the one I missed, I think, or was it Etienne's one? No, Etienne's one I missed. But Mark's one was interesting because I think he went into quite a bit of the work that he currently does.
Yes.
Um, and that for me was intriguing.
It
And
was
then we had
intriguing.
Samir
Yes.
Charles, who was our resident, and he was
Yeah.
here often to help us out when we had a guest, for instance, that couldn't make it. But this man, Samir, is just leading by example. And, he just wants to bring everyone along with him. Did you want to say something in terms of Mark?
100%. Mark, what I'd really appreciated also with Mark is that, he shared his personal story as well. And
Yeah.
he was quite vulnerable about that. So I'd really, really like to acknowledge him for that. But another very, very incredibly powerful um, episode that we had was with Arash.
Yes. That was
That
recently from chef to
was
healer.
recent. Yes, that was recent, but wow, did it resonate, hey?
It did. It did. I mean, I felt like I found a soul brother. I felt like this man was speaking our language in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it was so unique to find somebody that was just on the same vibrational energy. And I think he's sitting in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm,
So it just
correct, yeah.
goes to show no matter where we are in the world, we absolutely are all desiring and seeking the same thing. Avril says, loving and forgiving ourselves and being free and the best version of yourself on Instagram. I totally agree. That's ultimately what we wanted for the segment is people to practice self-love and compassion because if you're not able to get to that part, self-love, self-acceptance, self-respect, you cannot extend that to anyone else outside of yourself. Otherwise, you end up seeking that through other people. And so, most of our guests that came through, the common theme was them understanding that whatever their traumas, their wounds, their challenges were, amidst it all, they needed to rediscover themselves.
Yeah. I just want to also acknowledge our guest from last week. Um, that was
We
such
had
Shabnam. It was Shabnam. I think she was calling us,
Shabnam on.
if I'm not mistaken. And she had left her kids. Remember, she was in an abusive marriage and she lived in
Yes.
India. And then her ex was just pounding her with all of these lawsuits and then asked for
Mhm.
custody. And she got to the
Yes.
point where she realized that she wasn't going to go anywhere with this and that she had to change her whole perspective of it. And she as well had a long-term plan. And in the
Mm-hmm.
short term, she had, I mean, what I think a lot of people would have criticized her for, for allowing him to take custody of the children, but she knew that this would change, and she was just
Mm-hmm.
getting herself into a more powerful position to be able to claim her kids back, which she absolutely was able to do. So, the
Mm-hmm.
strength that must have taken, first of all, to give up custody of your children, move to a new country, establish yourself whilst all in that pursuit um, to get the kids back.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable strength, inner strength that it must have taken, and belief in yourself.
Absolutely. And having to rebuild that relationship with your kids afterwards, especially when the spouse would have painted a very gloomy picture about the mother, that must have been so hard for her to let
So,
go and to be in acceptance of knowing her children will resent her. And only afterwards having to rekindle those relationships. It's not easy. And now the work that she's doing is so admirable. Now she's
Yes.
all about paying it forward. And another common theme for me, I don't know if you found this, we've had guests that have PhDs and have been super successful people, also from around the world, right? But there's one thing that I noticed from all of them, those things no longer mattered.
Mm,
It was about how they impacted their
mm,
fellow human being. It was
mm.
about how they showed up for others, and the legacy that they would leave was not about their personal possessions or their accolades or their titles. And that was beautiful to witness as well, don't you think?
So admirable, so wonderful to witness. But you said leave a legacy, but how are we able
Hmm.
to leave a legacy, Anissa, if not by finding our purpose? Okay,
Yeah,
and this is what is also been a common theme amongst all of our guests, is that they've all found their purpose, which is why they are giving back, paying it forward, because purpose is
yes.
servitude. And that's how we leave
Mhm.
legacies behind in this world. It's not in accumulating um, qualifications and degrees and endless amounts of money and wealth and status and stature, from a societal perspective. It's about how we affect even one life going forward. That for me is
Yeah,
leaving a legacy.
agreed, agreed. I mean, there were so many people that were deeply reflective also of their role in being, and I mean, I always speak about being the villain in our stories or in our own story and also in other people's stories. And people were able to get to that level of consciousness and knowing, who am I showing up as in these different relationships or exchanges?
Yes.
And it's not something that just anybody gets to, because you need to have gone through the mud, the storms yourself. You should have hit rock bottom, be able to get to a point of being able to say, you know what, if I was in that darkness and I showed up as a villain in my relationship, surely I should be extending some empathy towards those that have not yet gotten there. And that was another common thread that I picked up, not
Mm,
from every guest because each topic was different, but it was
mm.
most of the guests also had to came to that almost
Yes.
deep realization.
Yeah, and I think another one that would have gone through each and every one, including ourselves, is the realization that for any sort of action or change to take place, you've got to look
Hmm.
within. It's all about
Yes.
looking within yourself and taking that accountability for who you are,
Mhm.
getting to a space where you are aware of all of your qualities, those
Yeah.
seemingly negative, those seemingly positive, but acknowledging that about ourselves, acknowledging our duality as beings in this, in this world, um, and accepting it,
Yeah.
accept for what it is, without wanting to push it under the carpet, especially with our shadow selves, where we don't want to acknowledge it. But for any change to occur, awareness is key. Acceptance
Mhm.
thereof is absolutely essential for any sort of action to be implemented to create change within us.
And on the change note, right, have you found when I look at this list of people and I look at who they are and where they were prior to who they are today, a lot of them left some, like even Shabnam, high profile positions and went and decided to go do the thing that was more meaningful to them.
Yes.
And a lot of these people, in terms of their roles that they stepped into, was very much about getting into that shadow side
Yes.
and
Correct.
then stepping into their purpose from there and
Yeah.
letting go of,
Mm.
like I said, some of them had PhDs, letting go of those titles and didn't even focus on that and stepped into something completely the opposite of that level that they strive towards at the beginning or early former years of their life.
But this is the thing of, Anissa, because they're now stepping into who they are meant to truly be. Okay.
Yes.
Um, and society conditions us into believing that this is what we need to aspire towards. We need to aspire towards those um, labels that allow us to be accepted and seen as success within our communities and society. But it does not necessarily mean that you are living your truth, which
Mm-hmm.
to, I think it was episode 6 of ours that spoke about releasing imposter syndrome and trusting ourselves. And in being able to do that, by making that decision to trust ourselves, having that self, I think self love, first of all, has to be initiated and embodied for us to be able to move on to that space of self trust. And once we're in that
Mm-hmm.
space of self trust, it is easy then to make the decision, or actually to get rid of the attachments that keep us in that space. Um, that's not by our choice. It really isn't by our
Mm-hmm.
choice. If we remove all of the layers and see who truly is there, who Anissa is, in her essence, then you make decisions in a totally different matter about where your life needs to be going.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who stuck out for me is Dr. Rika Fortune.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's spiral dynamics being explored and illuminating the path of human consciousness. That for me was such a profound episode. In fact, I think it's too little time in one session, but she broke this concept down so beautifully, so
So simply,
humbly.
yes.
Yes, she's it's a huge topic, and it
It,
requires extensive study to understand the level of human consciousness. But she brought that story so simply across in a practical example of how understanding the different spiral dynamics that makes up relationships that can either make it, or it can, for lack of a better word, sabotage that relationship if one doesn't understand all the nuances, the cultural and the diversity nuances that make up that dynamic. And I loved
that's
her storytelling. She's brilliant.
that's what she is. She's an incredible storyteller. And once you're sitting down with her, you literally just don't want her to leave, because
Yes.
like you said, she is so authentic in who she is, irrespective of
Mm,
the number of accolades, educational accolades that she has, her professional accolades that she has. So I just want to mention also that she's now running the Integral African Conference, which is going to be um, from the 4th to the 6th of October here in Johannesburg. And she's
wow.
going to have a whole host of different speakers at this event. Um, and you can see that this is her life passion. She travels
Yeah.
extensively, but what's so interesting to listen to is the stories that she comes back with from,
Mm,
especially in her travels in Africa, and how she
mm,
unpacks and understands different cultures, different dynamics, how you show up in a business space or in a corporate space, and how
mm,
that differs from country to country, from continent to continent, because of our social and cultural beliefs. So she's
mhm,
such an incredible human being. And like I said, so humble and simple to talk to. But yeah,
mm.
that was definitely one of the um, endearing guests that we've had on. Um,
I want to cast my eyes like falling on Cole David's Men Unmute. Oh my gosh, that was a powerful session as well, where Cole was sharing his testimony of early abuse as a young boy
yeah.
and how he had to overcome that. And,
Mm,
and now today serves people in his very community where he was raised and unmuting the abuse that is happening, that is prevalent within the society with boys and young men and men. And it's
Yes.
so taboo because, we're always thinking it's only ladies that are getting sexually molested or abused. But the fact that he could come here and speak on this platform so openly, it just is an invitation for others to not remain the victims within those spaces.
Yeah, and not only that, not in the sense of abuse, and I commend him highly on that, for being so vulnerable and for being so open about his experiences. But just generally from a male perspective, they, whether it's
Mhm.
grown up in an abusive surrounding or not, it's very difficult for men to express how they're feeling, to express their
Yeah.
emotion. And that's what that showed me. What he showed me and taught me is that encourage your men, encourage your sons to speak about their
Mhm.
emotions, not to be embarrassed about it, not to fall under the assumption, as most people are, are grown up into believing that men are just the providers. Men are meant to be
Mhm.
strong all the time. Men don't have time to express emotions. We need to start applauding
Mhm.
those who do it. We need to start encouraging it in our young boys that we are raising, and to see it as something that is normal and natural. And by doing so, you as a person, as a man, um, you're growing in such strength. You
Mm.
become such an amazing um, human being who is able to share with other men, but also with other women. And it's all about also stepping into our male form and our femaleness, that with pride, and
Masculine. Yes.
do
Yes.
unapologetically.
Mm.
And this is
But with balance, right? With balance, so that
absolutely.
we're not eagerly to no. And I think that's the other thing is that most women that now reclaim their power, or then you have the other extreme, this feminist power, it's still not right because then you want to be the alpha female or the alpha male. That is not how we were designed. We were designed to be equal in terms of our masculinity and femininity. And stepping into that in a balanced way is ultimately serving for the greater good of all. Because if you're too much on the one side of the spectrum, you're almost abusing the other side and you're in judgment of others, or you're not giving others the opportunity to show up in their truth.
Correct. And I think one of the common misperceptions that amongst females as well is that they view being feminine as being less equal or less powerful. But in
Hmm.
acknowledging our femininity, and our femininity in the very essence of what it is, we do then understand the incredible power that we possess. It will be completely different to what masculinity is. But
Hmm.
that's okay,
Very
because,
much.
there is equality in that. We're not equal in the sense that, from a strength perspective, for example, I may not be as equal as a man might be, but I
Mm.
have my own independent, unique qualities that mark me and allow me to be so much more powerful than my male counterpart. And it's about acknowledging those differences and
Yeah.
understanding equality, the overall equality that comes from it. So I don't have to change who I am in a corporate setting, for example, to come across as more masculine, as more alpha, or whatever it is. I can remain
Mhm.
who I am in my, whichever female qualities I possess, but it doesn't mean that it shows up as me being any less than any of my male counterparts.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, I work in so many different entrepreneurial ecosystems. And one of the things I'm always so mindful of, so whether it is working in a movement of the women in tech, whether it is in an innovation space and you have either male or female, I have observed there's almost a fighting of a position and authority within this space because whilst the intentionality behind it is around equality, right? And setting the platform in place for people to feel like there is balance. No, nobody's above or below, but they're working together to create this tribe and this movement. Yet I do see competitiveness that exists within these tribes. You do
Yes,
see people that actually want to step into being more out there and appearing to be more superior, whether it is more superior in terms of their connections or how much they've grown or how much money they've raised in these spaces. And it's the same within the male counterparts. The VC venture capital space, I just discovered recently that mostly men are awarded venture capital in these entrepreneurial ecosystem movements and tribes. But why? Right? Because most women are also equally exceptionally successful in their businesses. And I
yes,
think it perpetuates the cycle. I don't know what your thoughts are. Your thoughts are on that.
100%, and this is what I'm saying is that we need to make those differences. We need to make sure as parents, as mums
Hmm.
and dads, that we bring up um, children who are more accepting of understanding what the different roles are, not
Yeah,
judging who you are according to your gender or your race or your social status or anything like that. So I think fundamentally we have to also now bring it back to us. We have to
yeah.
internalize, and that's where change happens. That's how you start breaking down, these
Biases. The
bias.
biases.
Yeah, sorry, I just went blank there for a state. In doing that, I think this ties back in also because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to cultivate and bring up, you know, um, young people who are self-confident, self-aware,
Mm.
have trust within themselves, because that allows them to show up in a society that will then become a lot more equal, a lot more just. Um, and it brings me back to our episode, I think, that we had with, who was it? Eloise. Eloise, and I think Eloise spoke
Right.
about how loud is your self
It's my
worth,
favorite word. Yes.
and how loud your self worth, it dictates how we allow others to treat us and the boundaries that we set, not only for other
Mhm.
people, but for ourselves. Okay. And can you
Absolutely.
imagine if we had a youth who were all just so proud of who they are, so sure of who they are, and had their boundaries set in place? What type of a
Mm.
culture, what type of a society would we be creating then if
Mm.
these were the people that we were raising?
We're talking about the people we're raising. Today is the final day of school here in Cape Town. It's the spring holidays, short holidays, 10 days, and the kids got their reports. And naturally, as a parent, you get quite excited. But the things that excite me is not the grades. It's not whether you got sevens or 80% and 90%. It is the character stuff and the values stuff that I look for in the report. So when
Mm.
I'm reading about my kids demonstrating kindness and humility and good character and is well appreciated and recognized for those attributes, that warms my heart, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about taking it back to ourselves, taking it back in home, it actually starts with that. And I think that there's such a misconception in believing that we need to teach our kids to be the best at and achieve the highest accolades. But what does that all mean if you don't have good morals, character, and values?
Yeah,
Nothing,
for sure,
right?
100%, Lisa. Um, it's the cornerstone. It's the foundation of what societies are built, or successful societies are built on. That's what I
Yes.
believe. Um, someone had asked me, and I think I did mention this once before, and they asked me, like, what is my son doing? And
Mm,
he was studying at the time, and then asked, well, how is, like, what is he like? I mean, are you happy? I said, you know what, if I think of my son, he's a wonderful human being. He's so good with, older people. He's so good with young
mm,
kids. He's very respectful. He's a pleasant child, always helping. And
mm,
the person came back to me and said, if you had to say this when your son was 80 years old or 90 years old, I would tell you that you did the most incredible job, because those are the things that count. That's what
mm.
matters when you're looking at the success or a successful life for an individual. And,
Yes.
it brought me back to, also, I was reading this quote, well, not a quote, but this little story about a doctor, and he was being interviewed, and he must have been about 80 or 90 years old. And he says there was not one person and he'd seen many people pass away in his career as a doctor. And he said there was
Mm,
not one person who was on their deathbed who regretted, why didn't I work longer? Why didn't I get more degrees? Why didn't I rise up the corporate ladder, whatever it was? It was never, ever about that. It was about appreciating the moments, or the intimate moments with people. It was about, I wish that I had helped this person out, or I wish I had
mm,
been kinder to someone, or I wished I had more of these experiences or holidays things like that. Those are the things that matter.
mm. No, there are. And you know what? What you take me into now is because you're talking on their deathbed. We had a lot of guests that spoke about the beauty around embracing your grief and understanding your grief and living with grief and not trying to shy away from grief. And that death, in somebody's death, that there can be celebration, not just mourning for that person. And I think for me, it really does hold true that when we're on our deathbed, we may very well be grieving the life that we wish we had lived, as you've just articulated. But at the same time, this is part of, for me, why we bring this consciousness to this platform, and why I love the guests that we have, because it's never too late. If you have time now in this present moment, but the problem is people are grieving the wounds of the past, the ghost of the past, and they're in fear of the future. So they can't live this moment now to relish the opportunity that you're speaking about in investing more quality time with family, traveling, having more fun. I mean, people that I coach will say to me, I really miss dancing or singing or painting. And I'm like, but what's stopping you from doing it now?
Mm,
Right?
correct. Absolutely nothing. I was speaking to a colleague of mine, and I would like to get her on. She's in on maternity leave at the moment. She's had a beautiful baby
Mm-hmm.
girl. Um, and I was
Congrats.
talking to her, and she was just telling me that she's also in the mindfulness space. And she was telling me that, as a young girl, she did ballet for many, many years. And now she's got two little ones of her own, two daughters. And we were just having a conversation, and I found out something that I didn't know about her. So she's also like in her, I would guess, late 30s, 40s, maybe 40, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose. And she said her daughter came to her and said that she wants to do tap dancing. And she found, wow, how interesting is that? And she decided,
Very.
so do I. And at that age, she's now taken up tap dancing. And she says that after in October or November, she's got to do her exams. And so it definitely isn't too late. And it doesn't matter what profession you found yourself in. If you want to do something that's totally out of the box, it doesn't mean that you have to let go of where you are at right now
Mm,
or what your
mm.
career is at the moment. But it doesn't stop you as well from experiencing all of these, wishes that we've had from childhood. It's
Dreams. The
never ever.
dreams.
Yes,
Yes, it's those dreams that we never got to live.
correct. And that brings us to I think we had Neda Rudaki on, also a very, very good
Yes.
friend of mine. And she came
This
through,
was a journey through grief, loss, and growth.
yes. And
Oh, how
this is something that every one of us experiences in our life. And it doesn't matter where in your life you first experience it, but one thing's for sure that you will experience it, whether it's grief or loss, um, through the loss of someone close to you, the loss of a relationship. There's so many different things that we grieve on during our lifetime, and these can
mm,
be things that totally wipe you out, leave you absolutely paralyzed and unable to come back, with your full life force to where you were before. And Neda spoke to us so openly about her loss
mm,
in her life and
mm,
how difficult it was to deal with it. But what she also made me realize is the effects that it has on every other aspect of our lives. So and but it brings you back also to the whole generational thing as well, the generational experiences that we've had. And this opened up um, some a very, very interesting topic for me, and I'd love to get this guest on going forward. And his name
mhm.
is, he does family constellations, and I think I did mention
Oh
this,
my God.
but
Yes.
how absolutely hair raising and thought provoking, and it's almost like the penny drops when you go through one of his sessions, where you now are able to understand really and truly who you are as a person, how you are showing up, and the reasons behind it. And the reason being that we carry these generational traumas and experiences unknowingly and almost unconsciously.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
affects who we are today. It affects how we show up again as, wanting to get into a relationship and the challenges that we find, only to understand why we are the way that we are. Also, in the way
Mhm,
that show up with our spouses, our children, and the way we are so guarded, with ourselves. People
mhm.
sometimes who just say they don't swim, they have a fear of water. But why do you have this fear of water? And what Philip is able to do, and I've seen this, is that he goes back into generation. It normally has a more
I'd
pertinent.
love to have him on. Oh,
Oh my gosh, he's just absolutely amazing. And this is
would
this
you
is
would he be open to it?
yes, I'm sure that he will be. um One of the things that I just find such a blessing for us going into this is to be able to come into contact with such unique, incredible human beings, like our guests that have come on, like
Mhm.
guests who will be coming on, who are there to teach us and enrich us on so many different topics, Anisa.
Listen, when I look at this, and as I said when we started, I'm looking down because I'm still in awe. And I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface. I think when we do our 1 year celebration, what I'd like to maybe get Marissa to do for us is almost package it into what was the like for like themes, and maybe
Yes,
we pull out those golden nuggets from each person in terms of, because we always ask our guests, what would you leave the audience with anyway, right?
those
But
golden nuggets.
just looking down this list, I mean, there is just too many to mention here, but there was a term for me, resilient joy, that
Hmm.
was something new. So when you talk about enrichment, there were things that I got to learn through our guest here. And I'm an avid learner from the cradle to the grave. I'm always going to be curious, and I'm always going to be like this fascinated child that wants to know more. And that resilient joy that Julia Pierce spoke about, I was like, that's such a beautiful concept, because how do we hold on to the joy more resiliently?
Yeah.
It's a theme that I wouldn't even have thought of. It would never be in my psychology, in my thoughts in any shape or form. But I thought it was quite beautiful, because we're always talking about being resilient, but not about having resilient joy.
Yeah. That's
So I
so
don't know if
that
you can connect them.
I I love that because I always love looking at Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And on
Mm.
Hawkins' scale of consciousness, joy is one of the
The highest.
that's absolutely on the highest, higher than love
Mm.
also. So it's
It is.
close
Yeah.
to enlightenment than any of the other um,
Mm.
values that are placed on that scale. So having her come in and speak about that topic, I found so interesting. And like you say, it's not something that we would just generally think of speaking about
No.
or think of considering. And like you say, keeping that joy in your space.
Mm.
How do we keep that? How do we maintain that level of consciousness? But I guess
And
that once you reach that, you in a totally different space, right? Of
completely. Mm.
thinking and being present. Um,
Because
and
life happens, right? Life happens, and
yes,
we will have the storms that come in. And so, how do you keep resilient joy amidst those storms? And what I do love about the concept is that joy is accessible and within reach, but it's what we're choosing. It's that vibrational energy that we vibrate at, because within one day we can have had, and I'm sure anyone listening can attest to this, you may start off your day with good intentions, and you can do all the meditations and the affirmations and the journaling and the breath work, and then you get triggered by
mm,
something or
mm,
someone, right? And then it derails you. So
yes.
resilient joy for me was a huge concept to say, okay, how do I stay there? How do I hold on to
I
that
think,
in the
I,
midst of it all?
yeah, I think for me, the key to that is practicing gratitude.
Mm.
Because if we are able to acknowledge, if we are able to keep um, that understanding that life is full of ups and downs, it's not going to go the way that we always want it to go. But we are here as human beings in this space learning different lessons which we are meant to, that,
Mhm.
um, come into this world to learn. And through it all, we go through so much that we should be grateful for. But we normally overlook this because we in
Mhm.
this state of being in autopilot in our lives, running from here, trying to be the most successful, fitting with, wearing all these different caps and
Mhm.
being ticking all the boxes for society to see you as being successful. But when we look at who we are and we stop and we are able to be present, then we can acknowledge all the blessings that we have been given. And in doing
Mhm.
so, even if it's one in a day, just acknowledging one thing that you can be grateful for,
Yeah,
I think for me, that's a way of maintaining that level of joy in your
that
life.
resilient joy. So we have about 10 minutes remaining, my darling, and like we're trying to wrap up 40 different episodes, lessons, but if we put that aside and we say in terms of our own learnings, for me, I'm very passionately inspired in supporting others cultivate self mastery, right? Knowing thyself, healing thyself, and then being able to better lead thyself. I think a common thread also was all these individuals have found leadership within one aspect or the other, whether it is leadership of self or leadership of their environments, their circumstances, their relationships, their crafts. So leadership has also come out quite strongly as a common thread with
Mm.
every guest. I don't think
No,
there was one guest that didn't have leadership as an aspect there.
yes. But like you say again, leadership that's come from understanding who they are, from going through all of your challenges and embracing that by learning from it and then paying
Mm,
it forward. That for me is the ultimate or the epitome of leadership.
yes. Gary comes to mind here, Gary Judge, the gentleman that went to Italy, who married an Italian lady. He's from the
Yes,
UK, learned to speak the language, grew successful businesses, didn't speak a word of Italian, but
mm,
made such a big impact in business and now paying it forward in that realm of leadership and leading others. It's amazing, you know. I feel really privileged and honored and deep gratitude that who's come into our realm and have touched us. Dr. Elizabeth, who lost her vision and who was fueled by her inner vision. Oh my word.
yeah.
I think that was also one of our favorite ones. Dr. Elizabeth
She
Wisni.
was, yeah, for sure.
Wisni, I can never say her surname. Wisniewski. I think it's
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yes.
Wisniewski, yes, correct.
Yes.
And who spoke to us? Oh, it was Candice. It was Candice who spoke to us about
The
being
money.
our own money heroes. I found that to
Oh,
be very, very insightful and interesting as well, hey?
she's coming back on. I think we have her on the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll
Yes,
check now. I think we have her on the 4th again. And I think what we said is we're going to collaborate with some of her clients that are going to come on, who's going to
correct.
share their testimony. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong date. I was wondering where. Yes, on the 4th. So we do need to pick up a conversation with Candice again because we were going to unpack these money archetypes in a bit more depth and
Yes.
how our relationship with money or to money or with money is the inhibitor or the enabler or the catalyst for our growth and transformation.
Yeah, I'm actually
Powerful. Powerful.
excited for that one. I think it's going to
Yes, so
be
we do need to please touch base with that. We just need to align on. We never rehearse, but I think this would be something different we're doing in this segment. It's almost saying, let's bring the people that we've coached or mentored or facilitated programs to, let's bring them into a conversation and share their testimony from the
yes.
specialists that we've had on the show, which I think is beautiful. I said to Samir, same thing. Let's bring somebody maybe that there's a little background crackling noise. I don't know if it's your side, darling.
Still now?
Mm. It's been there on and off, but I thought it's maybe just ruffling of paper. Have you got paper in front of you?
I do have paper, but like I'm completely still now. You still
No, it's gone now. It's gone now. All good.
that
There it's back again.
it's my paper.
And let's talk about how many of our glitches we went through, right? And we
Oh my
just showed up regardless. We had many bloopers, and like next minute, I'm not on, and you guys are carrying on the conversation, or you've gone off and the sound has
and
gone off,
I
and
know
then we've had
WhatsApp
load
communication
shedding.
in between.
So we've had so much fun, like, but we kept it real regardless. Not having breakfast and it's already almost supper time and you eating something just beforehand. I
I
loved
was,
it. I loved that we
I was
just kept
I
it
was
real
having
and
my breakfast for lunch. late lunch
Yeah.
on many occasions.
You don't want to know what I ate for lunch today. I was like saying to my kids, yes, I never had it I don't eat a lot of takeaways,
Yes.
but I don't always feel good after I've had takeaways. And then, like today was one of those days where the Muslim takeaways or restaurants were closed because it's our prayer time. And I was like, okay, now I have to go for one of the other brands. Oh, and I
What
was
did you?
like, no, KFC. Well, I didn't buy myself. I bought for the kiddies, right? And then the next minute, the place where I wanted to go have my chicken salad, my tikka chicken salad. I was like, okay, no, you guys have that. I'm going to try and eat better. Oh, no, we're not open, only opening at 2. I was like, oh my
Oh
God, what
no.
now? Because I knew we're getting the live, so I wanted to make sure I had something to eat before the time. But anyway, so we've had all of those excitement happen here. We've had the 11th hour, you in the Uber trying to get to the live.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, I had to sit at the paddle courts on more than one occasion, I think, and come live
Yes,
from there as well. So, I just
yeah,
think it just resonates and it just highlights our commitment to doing this. But not just the commitment, but it's something that I get excited about for the end of the week. I look forward
yes,
to it. I really, really do look
yes.
forward to it. I mean, a lot of
It's
my
like
friends,
therapeutic, it's
yes,
like a therapeutic space, especially
correct.
with the guests and what they bring for us and what we're learning. And then whether you and I banter like this as well, it's always therapeutic because,
Look, I've always enjoyed our episodes also where we've maybe not
mm,
had a guest come on or we've been too late in confirming a guest, but I've really, really
yes,
enjoyed our time on together as well because there's a
it
lot
has
of
been.
pertinent topics that we spoke about, that actually resonate with a lot of women or even
Been.
single moms and single dads as well, like we are.
Mhm.
So it's been
Yes,
absolute.
oh,
What,
of course.
Anissa? I'm not sure how much time do we have left.
We have 3 minutes from the looks of it.
3 minutes. Okay, so like overall, and I know it's difficult, but what is like maybe the one theme that like I'm pushing it back onto you now that again
You never gave me your one theme.
I did. I told you it was about the inner, going back inwards.
Yes. So if
Yeah.
I look at this, gosh, I think for me, it definitely would. You know who I thoroughly enjoyed on this segment?
Mm.
You never got to experience her. Was
Tell me.
Leslie Flowers.
Yes. Tell
You
me.
never got to experience. She spoke about on the other side of grit. That for me was by far. I was so enthused, engrossed. I was just listening to her story. She's a phenomenal storyteller. She's just published another book as well, and she's in the 360 Biz Catalyst community with me. But that woman captivated me so much that I was sitting like this, I felt like I was sitting in the living room with her, just watching her tell me her story, because it is about what happens on the other side of grit. Because the segment being called shifting from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude. But what side of grit? Because you can
Mm,
be on the egoic side, or you can
mm,
move away from that and say,
mm,
I don't want to be on the egoic side of grit. I rather
mm.
want to be in the grace and
Yes.
live from a place of gratitude. So she captivated me in so many ways. And I'd love to invite her back again so that you can experience her,
Well, I
and
think
maybe she
we
can
must.
come and talk about this book of hers
Mm.
that she 25 years ago wrote and only came to life now.
No, are you serious? Wow. Wow.
And the
You see,
characters in this book is amazing. It's
so it
about
does.
her story as well.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter at which phase in your life things happen. They happen when they're meant to happen, and they happen if
Mm.
you believe in it. and believe
Absolutely.
in yourself, I suppose. Anissa, one thing that I wanted to also mention and just highlight is the point about self-love, but self-love through forgiveness. And I
Mm,
think this is so important because forgiveness isn't just, about other people. It's about bringing it back inward towards ourselves and forgiving
mm,
ourselves. Which
absolutely.
you've been through it, I've been through it. We've been so hard on ourselves, and with that, by not forgiving ourselves, we have all of the shame and guilt that's attached to it, which just
Mm,
brings you down even more and makes it so difficult for yourself. So I think, that true self love for me begins with the act of releasing that guilt, releasing that
agree. I
shame and that
agree.
self blame that we so often put onto ourselves.
Phew. Oh, sorry.
See, I see it's true what
No,
I'm saying. The
no, it
that's
is, and I wrestle with that part often because that guilt of not doing enough, not showing up enough, it's a wounded trauma response. So especially when times are going very difficult, then it's like, what do I need to do differently? And you
yes,
almost sabotage yourself instead of saying, you know what, let me give myself grace in this moment.
yeah, absolutely.
And so
And
that forgiveness, that self-forgiveness is about the grace to yourself.
correct. And there's a beautiful quote by Maya Angelou, and she says, "Forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it."
Mm,
And I always remember that.
powerful.
I always,
So we've come, like we've come a long journey, and I think in that quote in and of itself, I think we're constantly learning and growing and evolving. I hate the word evolving, but we're coming back home to a deeper, more connected part of ourselves. We're almost coming back home to our true selves.
mm,
Every single time we say we forgive ourselves, we love ourselves, we choose ourselves, we accept ourselves, we're kinder to ourselves. That's really when that quote actually comes to life, I think, when we put it into practice.
yeah.
So on
Yeah,
that note, we over like an hour,
we
2 minutes.
now.
Is there anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, I think, just mentioning about the evolving, I also, it doesn't sit so greatly with me, but it's about a
Mhm.
reconnection with our true self. Um,
Yes,
and it's about working towards making that connection stronger and stronger as we move through each phase in our lives, as we start to learn more about or unlearn, I think, as we start to
you know how I
unlearn
feel.
things and relearn it, and it's coming back to self.
Mhm.
And something that pops up in mind is, with Avatar. And there was the scene where they're all seated around the tree of life, and you plug in, you connected to it, and it's such a beautiful scene because it's actually really truly who and what we are all about, as
Mm,
as a humanity. We are here
agreed.
as individuals standing in our own strength with our own power, but when we are connected to that source, you see that we are just one small part of something that's absolutely so much greater than, than all of us put together.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Thank you for that. I'm going to close off today. Thank you for our guests that have been on and will continue to come back again, some of them. Thank you again, Ronald, Ashif. There's too many to mention right now, but I
Yeah,
think maybe what we should do is write a post and give gratitude and acknowledgement to all of those. I mean, I'm happy to do on my side, and then we can take it from there in the future how we will bring them back on again to publicly acknowledge them.
definitely. Thank you so much, Anissa.
Thank you.
Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. And thank you for, the incredible friendship that has grown over the past almost 1 year.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to so many more beautiful episodes with you. and to
That's
us
fine.
learning and connecting with so many incredible souls out there.
Can't wait. I'm excited to see what's going to unfold next in the Grit Grace Gratitude world for all of us.
And looking forward to our 1 year celebration.
I can't wait for that too. Oh, on that note, I'm going to end the live, and then I know you probably got paddle,